Hey everybody, and welcome to the CineFix Top 100, discovered by the Germans in 1904, where for over a century we've been dedicated to watching 100 of the greatest movies of all time. I'm Clint Gage, and joining me as always, San Diego's favorite anchor, Alex Stedman. Alex, what's happening?
You stole my joke. I was gonna say I'm Alex Stedman, but I'll just say
you could have done it.
I could have still done it, but it would have been copied. No, I'll just say that I'm here.
I mean, you can't do it now. You put your finger on it too much. But,
yeah. No, I'm calling in from a glass case of emotion.
That's great. And Michael Calabro, who very much is usually here, is still out with I don't know, whatever he's coal miner's gout, I think is what he's got.
He was punted over a bridge by Jack Black.
Punted off a bridge. Yeah. Best wishes for a speedy recovery. Hopefully he'll show up at some point to rescue us from bears. But it's just going to be me and Alex. Alex, you and me, holding down the fort.
A twofer.
We get to continue our Alone Against... It's a two-hander.
A two-hander.
Love it. Continuing our Alone Against the World theme, down a man this week. But I'm going to be honest right here up front. I like Dan's algorithm, I think, is starting to get a little sneaky with what fits the theme and what doesn't. Because today we're watching Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy. In terms of Alone Against the World, like this one is a sneakier entry. I think it absolutely fits, but it's not immediately clear why it fits.
I don't know. There is a point in this movie where he is alone against the world, but for much of the movie, he's got his squad, he's got his gang. Like you could put this movie in the Community season, and I wouldn't have blinked. Like I think it's very funny that we have this movie that kind of fits both seasons.
Well, we'll get to. I do think there is one moment where the movie really shows its cards, and we'll get to it in a minute. But for now, Anchorman: The Legend of Ron Burgundy. It's a 2004 movie about the Channel 4 news team in San Diego back in the 70s. And as the opening narration puts it was an age when only men could read the news.
It's so funny.
It's just such an absurd.
Only men can do that. Only men can read
premise.
From a teleprompter.
Yeah, only men could read the news. But written by Will Ferrell and Adam McKay, directed by McKay, and it's starring just who's who of people who were the funniest people at that time. You know, Will Ferrell, of course. Christina Applegate is so good in this movie.
So good.
Paul Rudd, Steve Carell, David Koechner, Fred Willard, Chris Parnell, Kathryn Hahn even shows up for a minute. You got a very young Seth Rogen. Jack Black has a cameo. Even Paul F. Tompkins.
Ben Stiller for a brief part.
Judd Apatow produced it as well. I mean, there's the nuts and bolts pedigree of this thing. Like, it made a bunch of money, something like $90 million off of something like $25 million. So like it did well financially. But the real story of this movie to me is more about like where it falls in the landscape of comedy in the 2000s.
Mm-hmm. We were talking about this just before we aired, but I truly feel like I'd seen a comment online that said before there were memes, there were just dudes quoting Anchorman. And I feel like this is this movie's legacy. Like, it was so ubiquitous in the culture for 2004, I feel like for the entire aughts, everyone was just saying, I'm in a glass case of emotion. Yeah. I'm going to slap you in public. Like, I just feel like lines from this more
kind
than
of a big deal.
I'm a big deal. No, it works 60% of the time, every time, which I feel like we have to acknowledge the Sex Panther in front of me. Tayo, you're
real quick.
Yeah. You're a genius. It looks just like him.
He's getting better every episode too. I absolutely
every episode.
Congratulations on getting something fun to put on your desk. By the way, you got Sex Panther now. That's
the Furby from
awesome.
The Uncut Gems episode and the Sex Panther. Oh my god!
Right next to Sex Panther.
Banger
it's
after
great.
banger. No, but like
I'm doing fine. I still have my Three Amigos back here. But,
that's true.
I am going to request one of those one of these days. Something's going to.
You got to put dibs on one. I feel like we've got some great ones.
Yeah. This one is clearly yours. All yours.
Yeah. Oh, have to be. I just feel like this defined an entire sense of humor for years. Also significant that it was Adam McKay's directorial debut, which I didn't even realize until I was like doing research for this movie again.
And he and Ferrell became sort of like the Scorsese De Niro of comedy there for a minute. Like they did a lot of stuff together over the next couple of years. But to your point about this being a it sort of like crystallized a subgenre of of comedy. You know, prior to this, Ferrell had done, I think, Zoolander and Old School. I think Elf was right before this.
Yeah.
So it was like very, like, and he had been on Saturday Night Live since the mid '90s. So it's like everybody knows Ferrell is hilarious, and he's got a very unique kind of voice. But those were all sort of very leaning on the script and on the premise kind of projects. But then Anchorman, it's so obviously like just stand in front of this close up and say whatever funny shit comes to your brain, and we'll figure out which one we like best later. Like there's that subgenre of comedy that McKay and Apatow both ran with it, because after this one you've got, you know, Talladega Nights and Step Brothers and Other Guys, and Apatow's out there doing 40-Year-Old Virgin and Knocked Up, and, you know, then Superbad is also out there, and Wedding Crashers and Role Models and Walk Hard, like all of these comedies that are sort of subscribing to that school of like just stand there and say as many hilarious things as you can come up with, and we'll stitch them all together later. And even the outtakes in the credit sequence of this movie is just proof of that. They just like rattle off all the different, like, Great Odin's Raven and Zeus's beard, and like every incarnation of that one line for that one setup that they did. Like, it shows up in the end credit, you know, and they're all equally meaningless and funny, and
but that's why they're so good.
Yeah, right. And they literally couldn't decide which one to take out of the movie, so they put them all in the movie just at the end, you know.
But I think I've said this in the past on this show, I can't even remember, but let's bring back credits bloopers. I miss credits bloopers. Like those were the days. Like, way better than post credit scenes.
And I love that they included a Smokey and the Bandit blooper, because like that era of Burt Reynolds stuff, like 70s and 80s Burt Reynolds stuff, and, you know, think about like Cannonball Run and all of that, like all of those movies that the last thing that they did was take themselves seriously. So like all the bloopers went in, and they're wonderful, and I miss doing that. You know, and the one version of it that's no good is on one that we ran into in Being There, where they put the blooper reel of Peter Sellers in at the end, and that's what he blamed on not winning the Oscar.
Yeah.
For being there.
I think that's where I brought it up, that I miss blooper reels and credits, because I was like, I feel like I've talked about this on the show before.
Nobody's in danger of winning an Oscar in this movie, but like throwing out a few more memes for dudes to say.
Listen, this sustained the dudes in the aughts, but like, what were you were saying about Will Ferrell? I don't think I'm gonna be secret that this is very much a my pick movie. Like, this is very, very high on my list, spoilers. And I feel like, you know, when I kind of talk to you guys about, like, you know, the Ghostbusters and, you know, Groundhog Days, this was my kind of version of that, because I was very young when this came out, and I was obsessed with Will Ferrell. Like, I thought he was the funniest person on the planet. I like had his like SNL DVD collection. Elf is on my list because I loved him so much in Elf. Like, he was so influential for me growing up, but I feel like this is his best role, like more than Elf, more than anything. And I think I read somewhere that he said it's his favorite role, and I feel like
I had read that too.
Yeah, and I feel like it's just because he was allowed to just be funny and stupid and say whatever the heck he wanted. I feel like it was pretty like formative for him. I don't know, like it's a really important character to him, it seems.
I think so too, because you look at the stuff that came after, you know, because Ricky Bobby. In Talladega Nights, and you know, he and John C. Reilly and Step Brothers too, like those.
That was another movie that like formed my sense of humor with Step Brothers.
Yeah. The confidence which they could just trot out a film project with the barest bones of a narrative to hang a Will Ferrell performance on was just through the roof at this point. Like, you knew that you didn't have to have a proper script or a proper story. Like, you could have just enough. And then Will Ferrell's going to go out there and be funny all day long, every day through the course of the production. And you'd stitch it together, and he would say 9 or 10 things that would sell T-shirts for decades.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
Like, and that was sort of the return on that investment, right? It was like, what are the 9 lines that everybody's going to repeat forever?
Yeah, I had a friend who had never seen Anchorman, and I kept trying to get her to watch it because I love this movie. And she was like, I've seen it in clips. She was like, I've absolutely seen this whole 90 minutes of movie in memes and like clips that people have shared over the years. Like, I haven't sat down and watched the entire thing.
Yeah.
But like back to Will Ferrell, I just feel like he's a very inherently funny person. And what I always go back to is that very famous SNL cowbell sketch. Like there's nothing so clever about that sketch, but him just like thrusting in a crop top, hitting a cowbell is so funny. Like no one should be that funny.
He's not a guy that has to do much to be funny, right? The thing that I always think of, this might be a little more obscure, but it was from Jack Black hosting Saturday Night Live years ago, and they did a replacement for the birthday song for Happy Birthday. It was this sketch where there's people just standing around singing Happy Birthday, like all bored. And I think it's Seth Meyers is in it, actually. He's like, can we just not? And then Will Ferrell comes out in front of everything and goes, does this look familiar? And he's got a weird haircut, and that's it. He doesn't do
I actually remember
else.
that.
But he just stands there and he goes, does this sound familiar?
It's not
and it
clever.
is hilarious.
It's so funny.
He doesn't, there's nothing about it except for it's Will Ferrell, and it's my favorite thing. And then it proceeds to be like this weird, like fantasy witchcraft epic song about, it's funny. And I invariably send that video to one of my friends on their birthday every year. The fact that this is Will Ferrell's, this movie succeeds on the strength of Will Ferrelling all over this movie.
But I feel like he encourages other people to Will Ferrell too, because like Steve Carell is, I think, at his funniest in this movie. Like I think, certain lines have been a little played out. Like I Love Lamp isn't as funny as it once was, even though it was very funny at the time. But like his like scared Chihuahua face throughout this movie just absolutely kills me the entire time.
And I pooped a candle. I think that's in the credits.
That is in the credits. That's 100% in the credits.
That's the one that I always remember. Yeah.
Christina Applegate, I'm going to talk a lot about. I think she's incredible. I think she's like underrated when people talk about Anchorman. I just feel like everyone's just having a good time, and that's kind of what makes this movie. Is they're all just like they were just given a bit to do, and they did it.
For all of us here at News Center 4, I'm Ron Burgundy. You stay classy, San Diego.
You stay classy, San Diego.
The other thing that I find fascinating about this movie is like, I feel very nostalgic, I think just because of my age, of that time in the aughts, I would say, where you just constantly had these like really solid mid-budget comedies that just kind of relied on the strength of the cast.
Yeah.
I just feel like we don't get those anymore. Like you have your
that $20 to $30 million and R-rated comedies too.
Right.
The Knocked Ups and 40-Year-Old Virgins, for those to be like, they're coming back a little because we got like Blockers and
Bottoms.
Bottoms.
I think the reason I liked
really
Bottoms
funny.
so much because I was like, oh, we're back in 2004.
Yeah.
Like,
Right. Yeah.
No, it's a bygone era that I hold very dear. You could just go to the theater at any point and go see a really stupid comedy that you're gonna have a good time.
See a raunchy and nonsensical comedy that actually turns a profit for the studio, and will again make more money on DVD and syndication.
That's one thing I didn't
miss that.
Yeah, like I do wonder how much money this movie made on DVD. I'm sure that exists somewhere.
Tons.
But I feel like the
Yeah.
DVD life of this movie was insane. I feel like that's where most people I know watched it.
Yeah, how else could it have memed before memes?
That's true.
Like it's, and the other thing, like I knew it must have done well on DVD because that's where they released Wake Up Ron Burgundy, which was the entire other movie that they built out of stuff that they cut from Anchorman. It's like I'm sure you've seen it, or
Not
you
for
saw
a
it at least.
while.
It's not good.
Yeah. It's no.
It's not worth going back to. Like, it's not good, and I guess the stuff was cut for a reason. I don't know how it would have worked because there's an entire plot about terrorists that are gonna like blow up the.
None of it. I do remember that none of it had any sense to it.
No, well, and it is a wholly separate plot. It's ridiculous that they had 90 other minutes of a completely different movie in the can. But that was a 2-disc special edition DVD that came out later that year. Like, so they actually cut and finished a whole other movie, which is not a cheap thing to do, for another DVD release. So like, I imagine it made a ton of money on home video. But
well, to me, the fact that they even made that just shows how much that they loved this character and how much Will Ferrell loved this character. Like, they did not, like, they were just making up weird subplots in this guy's life with no real coherence to the story. Like,
Yeah.
as much as I love this movie,
like-
I feel like the actual plot, like the through line, is not that groundbreaking. It is a collection of really, really, really funny moments.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, right? Like and we've run into this a couple of times with movies that I feel like we've talked about. You have to keep this plot as simple as possible if you're going to do all this other stuff. Like if you're going to do, I think like it might have even been Gravity, where it's like, if you're going to do groundbreaking visual effects, like you need to keep the rest of it simple. Or if you're going to like sell an outlandish premise, like it's set on in a fantasy world or something like that, like you have to keep the plot simple and relatable, so I'm not questioning too many things while I'm watching a movie, you know? And so like keeping this absolutely simple was partially by design, I would imagine, for that, but also like frankly, it's hard to tell how much they paid attention or how much they cared.
I don't think they cared that
there
much.
are a couple of payoffs that I think are planted and paid off in legit good ways. For all the improv and randomness that happens in this movie, like Baxter gets punted off the bridge, which leads to him missing the newscast, and Veronica gets her chance, which leads to them fighting, which leads to the teleprompter prank, which leads to him, which also the teleprompter prank was set up earlier in the movie with the question mark. And then the Baxter coming back to save the day at the end when they're reconciling in the bear pit. It tracks it tracks because Jack Black as a biker punted a dog off a bridge, and then the dog comes back to rescue them from bears. Like that part of it doesn't make any sense at all. But like
I'm
the
here for the
structure
Baxter
of it
redemption.
is actually there, you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the structure and the through line of that like A to B to C is for sure there, but like the content of it is utter nonsense.
Yeah.
Which is fun.
I think that what that comes from, though, is more so understanding of the character. Like, you know, when you're making a character, you give them a stupid quirk. That being Ron Burgundy will read whatever's on the teleprompter no matter what. That's just something that's going to inherently come back because that's something really stupid about the character. I think at the end of the day, these dudes are just really good at telling jokes. But I think him as a character is actually kind of deep in some ways.
No.
I have a lot of thoughts on the Christina Applegate character, and she was a not insignificant like impact on my entire life. Like young Alex was like, "That's me. I'm gonna be her."
Are you a journalist because of Christina Applegate and of Veronica Corningstone?
I'm being completely serious when I say yes. Like that is why this movie is on my list. I when I was very young, I saw this and I was like, I want to be a writer, and then I saw Veronica Corningstone, and I was like, that's who I want to be. I want to be Veronica Corningstone. So
that's great.
So like even like watching this movie as an adult, like there are things that like jump out to me. Like we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but her like monologue about like, yeah, it's a man's world, but that's why you have to be the best, the very best.
A little bit of
like,
VO.
that was a not insignificant impact on young Alex. Like, you know.
Yeah. I mean, if we can start there with brilliant moment, like let's get into brilliant moments real quick.
Let's get into it.
And the moment where she VOs about being in a man's world and having to work harder and all of that on her non-regional dialect, like
I wrote down the quote just because it makes me laugh.
Yeah.
While they're laughing and grab-assing, I'm chasing down leads and practicing my non-regional diction. Like it's so good.
Non-regional, yeah,
well, that's why I love
good.
her too, because
But,
she's like not. She's also not above parody. Like they're all like satires of some kind of trope, and she's very clearly like a satire of like the super ambitious woman. But like that gives her a chance to also be really funny and also be a really sympathetic character.
This is also the moment where Dan's algorithm is showing its hand, because this is an Alone Against the World movie, but the movie is from the world's perspective. Like it's it's Veronica Corningstone who's alone against the world.
Oh my God, Clint, that's so real.
It's not the Anchorman.
It was really her against the world the whole time.
Yeah,
Wait,
it was
you
her
just
against
blew
the
my
world this
mind.
whole time.
Oh my God. Okay, Dan.
Yes.
Broken clock, write twice a day.
No, I'm more worried about the algorithm getting too smart for its own good at this point.
Yeah.
Because I do think this is a fascinating Alone Against the World movie.
But
in
from
that
her
respect.
perspective,
Because,
that's so good.
There's a version of this movie where, like, watching it in this context, it's just like, wait a minute, is this a movie about Ron Burgundy realizing that he's the man? needs to stop upholding and benefiting from the status quo? Like, is that what this movie's about, kind of? And it's like, yeah, a little bit.
Well, and it's funny too because like her and Ron go through different versions of being alone against the world. She starts that way, but then when he is alone, she starts getting a fan base and she starts like befriending all the women in the office.
Yeah.
So you do like see this switch, and at the end, none of them are alone, and they're lovely. Like,
yay!
Yeah.
But going back to the very beginning, and this is one of my favorite things about. I say this a lot about a movie that like shows you what you're in for in the very first couple of minutes. The VO from the newscaster, breaking down who Ron Burgundy is, that ends with Ron Burgundy was the balls. Like that.
I'm sorry,
that
this movie's
line-
really funny to me.
No, it's funny. Listen, I mean it's funny, but like that's one of those funny lines that like sums up this entire movie.
Yeah.
Honestly, like because it's crass and it's blunt and it doesn't make any sense. It's clearly a joke and it's delivered with this intense sort of like earnesty. And it's like, I know what you mean, but also, what the hell do you mean? Like,
No, but you get it though. He's
it's
the
hard-
balls.
Yeah, he's the balls. And it's like, yeah, no, I follow that. But if you pull on that thread of like, what are you talking about? Like, there's not an answer, Like, I don't know what that means. Which makes it like a perfectly Anchorman line. Like, it's great. And to start the movie off with Ron Burgundy was the balls. It's just like, okay, no, I know where we're going. I'm good.
Oh yeah, no, that whole opening monologue I just love. I think it's one of the best parts of the movie because you see how ridiculous he is as a character. You see him doing the stupid like vocal exercises and the mouth exercises. Like, it's local news with respect to my fellow journalists is a little funny sometimes. Like, it's a fun thing to satirize.
Yeah, and it also sets up a couple of things because one of my favorite places to put a movie to set a movie is a low stakes world where people treat it as though it's the highest of stakes.
Yeah.
And
oh my
who's
God,
really
that's
good
a
at
whole
this
thing throughout
is,
this movie that we'll talk about, especially in that fight scene.
Yeah.
Like, everything is very serious.
And there's one guy that I think has made his whole career based on this, Danny McBride. Like, and he put it in a really interesting way. It was like, I think he described all of his characters as like idiot Don Quixotes, which is so cool.
Yeah.
And I think he's exactly right. Like but like it's that sense of, we're this is local news, guys. This is local news,
Yeah.
but it is like earth-shatteringly important to everybody, Veronica included. That setting initially, like that's set up from the beginning. The fact that this is just San Diego and this is local news, but everybody believed it, and all of those things that the narrator says.
It's to that point of like being very serious. It's when they do the teleprompter trick very later in the movie, and he says, "Go f yourself, San Diego." One of the thing that cracks me up is like the camera guy, his reaction just being like, like completely overreacting. Like it's the worst thing anyone's ever done. And who's the guy? There's like a very famous comedian who comes in and is like, why did you do that? Like you ruined everything.
So before we started rolling, I told you there was one moment in this movie after 20 years of watching this film. There's only one moment that makes me lose my mind laughing. And it's Chris Parnell as Garth. Walking in and just like blubbering nonsense, like, why would you say such a thing? That stink. And the way that he phrases it too is like, that stink coming out of your mouth, and you got poop mouth. There's poop coming out of your mouth. And like that bit, like I'm gonna laugh for a week because I just watched
funny.
that. Like there's something about that moment. And I think, what's funny is like, I think he's the William H. Macy from Boogie Nights of this movie. Right? Like he's supposed to be that like trod upon, meek sort of assistant, and like they don't really listen to me, Ed, like that. He's that guy, and here he is being betrayed by his hero by saying, "Go fuck yourself, San Diego," on the local news, and he's just whimpering about it, and it is so funny, and I can't get enough of that. It's so great.
I also feel like that's one of the less memed to death lines of this movie. That I feel like that's also why it's still kind of funny.
Yeah.
Like no, we don't say poop.
Yeah, it's
mouth
still a little
enough.
fresh.
Yeah.
Ron, why did you say that? Why? Why, Ron? Why? You're my hero, Ron.
Garth,
You come out with stink like that? Poop. Poop mouth. Poop out of your mouth.
going back to the very beginning and how it intros everything, like the way that it introduces Ron and the way that it establishes how completely absurd he is and this world is and the stakes of this world. Like this is honestly, there's an argument to be made that this is a fantasy film.
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like there's magical realism all over the place, and none of this is real. They're not trying to be. But setting him up to be an absolute buffoon allows him to deal with the misogyny and all of the other things, and the scene where they're talking about diversity, and he's like, I think it's an old ship, like that. He's so
It's an old
so
wooden
stupid
ship.
and so an old wooden ship. Yeah. So you set that up very early on, and you make him such a buffoon, and you make him like, even in the opening credits where he's talking about like, maybe don't wear a bra next time. It's like he's like dirtbag things to say to people, but he says them with such charm and such charisma, and he's so funny, and we're allowed to laugh at it because we know how stupid he is, right? And that's what's so important about this opening montage, is that it gives everybody license to, like, we're all making fun of this. Like, this is not us professing these or espousing these beliefs or whatever. Like, we are all making fun of this, and it is perfectly clear from frame one of this movie.
And there are like little moments. It doesn't happen a lot, but there are little moments where you can tell someone's like calling him out for being stupid. Like aside from the Christina Applegate character, in that scene, that diversity scene, after he says that very stupid, very funny to me line of, I believe diversity was an old wooden ship. The Fred Willard character says like, I don't think the network would care if we had an old wooden ship, Ron. There are like little glimpses where like the facade kind of cracks. But no, that's a good point, because there's so many times in this movie where I feel like I should really hate Ron Burgundy. But I feel like you can't, like, when he's like giving Veronica Corningstone a hard time for her success, like that should have made me angrier, and it did. But it's like, but he's an idiot.
He's an idiot, and the point of the movie is to portray that as idiocy. There's no like, we're just making light of this. It's the point of it is like, see how stupid it is the way they treat women. Yeah, like that's the entire point of the film.
And that's why I defend it as hard as I do. Like I think despite how hard it's been memed, like even watching it now, I'm like, man, some of this still resonates. Like it's hard being a woman in a man's world, and I can't believe they made that kind of one of the points of this movie. Like they could have just had it be like an extended bit, but like I don't know. I don't know if I'd be a journalist without Veronica Corningstone. Like, it did something right. But I think even before the diversity scene, they have the party scene where he first meets Veronica Corningstone and hits on her. First of all, so many quotable lines from that. The, like, everyone be quiet, I have a very important news broadcast, and then Cannonball.
Cannonball.
Yeah.
My favorite is I have many leather-bound books.
Oh, yeah, a classic. I'm a big deal. Yeah.
My apartment smells of rich mahogany.
I feel like that was one of the top 5 memed lines out of this movie back in the day.
Yeah, it was up there in terms of just dudes walking around saying them. Yeah. Absolutely.
But one of the funniest things too is this is like right after the party, you have like the first Baxter scene. First of all, I laugh every time I think of, I can't speak Spanish, speak English. But I just have so much love for little Baxter as a character. And I feel like he really like also kind of makes Ron a more sympathetic character.
Yeah, for sure. Well, he's Ron's heart, right? Like really Ron shows up, and all of a sudden Ron has feelings for something else. Like, the only thing we knew about Ron before this was like, everybody come look at how great I look. Like that's the Ron we know. And then we go home and he has this, frankly, intimate moment with his pup. Although I will say, like, this is the one scene where I feel like the seams start to show a little bit in terms of it being very clearly improv and very clearly stitched together afterwards. Like, there's something about the scene that I'm like, he stumbled over that one. Maybe you could have done a better take.
Yeah. No, I'm actually not even going to argue with that. I feel like. But it's still one of my favorite scenes. I don't know why. I think that line, he said something about like, oh, you pooped in the fridge? I'm not even mad. I'm impressed.
And you can see Will Ferrell like coming up with the line on the fly, right? He's like, you ate a whole wheel of cheese? Wow. That's... Yeah.
But like, I don't know. It feels like we're over analyzing Ron Burgundy, but I don't think we are. I think Will Ferrell put a lot of thought into this character.
Well, there's something that he represents that is both like he's a buffoon, and you have all kinds of latitude to just be an idiot, and like so there's no filter there where that's concerned. You can say literally anything, and he's an idiot. He didn't mean it. But there's also a cadence to him. There's a self-importance to the cadence that he speaks with that is so easy to write off. And I think ultimately that's like where the movie succeeds, is you're able to completely write off anybody on screen at any given time as being stupid.
Oh yeah.
Like without that, I don't know that this movie is as fun to be around, you know?
Well, I don't even think we've talked about like the news team around him, the Paul Rudd, Steve Carell, and David Kochner. Can I start with my favorite of the Paul Rudd moments? Oh yeah.
Is when we're meeting them at the party, and he's sitting on the couch next. First of all, he's got a gun. He's just holding a tiny little gun. And then it's the bits where they're talking straight to camera and introducing themselves. And it's the one where he says, I know what you're thinking, and yes, I have a nickname for my penis. And then he introduces us to it's the Octagon. And then his testicles are named James Westfall and Dr. Kenneth Noisewater, which is, I don't know, they're just incredible names. I'm a sucker for made-up names. But this girl that's sitting next to him is my favorite part of the scene.
She looks so bored.
Because it's like, yes. And like the way that I read this scene is that she's aware he's talking to the camera. Mm-hmm. Like she's aware that this is part of the world. You're talking to the camera, whatever that means. You're talking just out that direction. You're introducing yourself to somebody. I don't know. But she could not be bothered at all.
No.
She's just like, there's a version of this where it's just like, yeah, no, he's off in a bubble doing this thing and you're not aware of it. But like, I don't think so. Like, I think she's just tired of it. She probably sees this every week, which is, I think, really funny to me.
I also feel like this is a really underrated Paul Rudd role. I feel like like between him, Will Ferrell, and Steve Carell, I was just laughing so much. Again, like the Sex Panther scene is one of my, I think about it all the time. Works 60% of the time, every time.
We need to slowly. Okay, so let's see. 60% of the time, every time. I'm gonna start writing these down. We need to, as we go. Let's
the most
just
memed like
keep
moments.
Well, no, not most memed. Let's just keep a running ranking of our favorite lines, because ultimately, like that's, we can overanalyze the characters and we can talk about what we can search for meaning and all of. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, like the story of this movie is all of these quotable lines. Like it's all of these lines. What's in the lead for you right now, though? Because it's got to be. It's got to be the question mark, right? It's got to be. I'm Ron Burgundy.
Yeah, I'm Ron Burgundy.
I think everybody. Anytime anybody, it's not necessarily that exact line, but anytime anybody wants to make fun of somebody just like doing something thoughtlessly, they can say it in that cadence.
Oh yeah,
and like we know what joke they're making.
It made a whole genre
of comedy. That's like a very
comedy.
Flexible one.
Also, if you've ever, Clint, you and I have both read off a teleprompter before.
Yes.
And I find it so hard not to think of this movie when I'm reading, because I will read anything you put on that teleprompter. It's so, because when you're in the groove, like, you can't think.
It's a fool's errand. It's a fool's errand to not think about Anchorman when you're reading off a teleprompter.
Yeah, you can put anything
just do it, get it out of the way. Yeah.
I do a good one for me that a line that I do appreciate, and I brought it up earlier, was English. I can't speak Spanish. It's so stupid. It makes me laugh every time.
Yeah.
Leather-bound books. Apartment smells of rich mahogany.
Many leather-bound books. I'm gonna lobby real hard to get that one up near the top.
Yeah.
Because it's that whole conversation that he has with. First of all, we can back up and talk some filmmaking, some craft for just a second. The lighting gag that they do on Veronica the first time he sees her at the party.
Yeah.
There's like we go into slow-mo, and then there's like a very warm top light that comes down, and like it's kind of 3/4 back from his perspective. In other comedies, like one of the things that I've seen a lot is you'll see that moment, somebody imagining that moment, and then we come out of it, and then you see somebody be like, "Oh, sorry, I'll turn that light back off." Or like somebody's walking slow-mo and their hair is blowing just perfectly. Yeah. Like, "Oh, I don't know who put this fan here." Like they'll deflate a technical gag like that. And I'm so glad that they didn't do it here.
It would have been too much,
It's
I
such
feel.
such a yes, and it's such a they might have cut around it for all I know, but it's such a good choice to just let this be some weird fantasy music cue, lighting gag, like let's just do the whole thing. But it's a gorgeous shot, honestly.
It actually is a great shot. Like there are times, and you said this earlier, there are times where I'm like, oh, they're actually making filmmaking out here. Like,
hey, they're making a movie. Look at this.
yeah. But I'm looking up the costume designer now because I'm dumb and I didn't do it beforehand. We'll find it.
Yeah,
Shout out to that person.
Incredible
Yeah.
costumes. I think of the 26 or whatever $1 million of the budget, I bet a decent chunk, a bigger chunk than you think, went to the wardrobe.
Well, it's Veronica has some great outfits, but also like the difference in the way that the different teams of anchors dress, and they all have like their own like weird personality. I really appreciate that touch, and it goes back to what you were saying about like this almost being kind of like a fantasy. Like I don't know, it kind of reminds me of Warriors in some ways, where it's just a bunch of gangs and they all have their things, and none of it makes any sense, but it's very funny.
It's clearly a world that doesn't exist.
No.
Like if you want to call that a fantasy, or if you want to call it magical, whatever, because do we want to talk about do we have any other brilliant moments before we get to the fight? Because the fight is over halfway through the movie.
Yeah, I feel like one of my favorites, and I feel like we also have to talk about it because I feel like it's one of the most famous, is the whole entire like Ron and Veronica falling in love monologue, or not monologue, but like montage. It's the afternoon delight scene, which I think has been pretty hard memed in the past 20 years. I think seeing it as a kid, it was the funniest thing I've ever seen. Also, when I was 12 years old, I did not realize that was a real song. I thought they made it up for the movie, which I think made it funnier for me.
Oh, that song?
Yeah, no, I didn't know. But I was 12. I was like, that's a funny song they just made up. But like that, I think that is one of the big parts of this movie's legacy. And the reason I like it so much is the little looks they kind of give each other while they're singing. There's a part where Ron and Champ look at each other when Paul Rudd and Steve Carell are harmonizing, and they're like, oh, that was good. they're crushing it.
Hey.
Sky rockets in flight. Afternoon delight.
You guys have it, I think.
There's another scene mixed in there in the jazz flute sequence.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We haven't
at the bar.
Yeah.
Is really funny to me. Like that's another bit of like, there's something so destructive about the comedy too, and like they literally don't mind breaking things, and there's comedy to be found in, and it goes to the gang fight and everything about, there's a certain amount of violence that you can get away with as comedy in this movie, and like even in this jazz flute sequence where he starts walking on the table and he's very intentionally like crushing the glasses as he goes, even like sliding under the bathroom stall is such an invasive.
Oh my God, the
joke
sliding
to
under
make,
the bathroom
right?
stall.
Like,
I forgot about that.
Anyway, it's just such an anything goes attitude of just like, just pop up from below the table or slide under the bathroom stall, and like whatever is funny in whichever moment, regardless of what happened in the previous moment and regardless of what's about to happen in the next moment, like, go ahead. Is it funny? Yeah, great.
And
do it.
I feel like it's also a payoff of the Ron Burgundy is the balls like setup, where it's like everything is ridiculous, everything this character does is ridiculous, but everyone's buying it. I mean, this is what ultimately made Veronica sleep with him. He's being so ridiculous, and yet look at him go.
Well, and everybody's on the same page though.
Yeah.
Like everybody's playing by the same rules. For every Ed Harkin that can roll his eyes and be like, I don't know, I don't think a big wooden ship is what the network is interested in. Like, he's still laughing at Champ talking about smearing barbecue sauce on Veronica's butt. Like it's like they're all playing by the same rules. Even when Veronica gets sort of swept up in his charisma too, it's like I still buy it. Like you kind of don't want to, but I buy it. Like,
well, they kind of set it up nice, I feel, where he's like actually kind of giving a crap about her like inner life and dreams, which like no one has to this point. So like it's not too absurd. I never feel like the Veronica Corningstone character is like too ridiculous. Like yes, she is like a little like again like I was saying something of a satire herself, but she's still kind of like the straight man, the sane person.
Yeah.
I will say one scene that does kind of make me cringe is right after this when they do it. And like the animated sequence, I'm like, this one I don't laugh at. Like I don't know why. It's just an odd one.
The animated sequence is right. I do like a good animated sequence
same.
stand-in for a sex scene. Black Dynamite had a really great one too. Yeah. I think it was a couple years after this, but and even was like, it's the most beautiful rainbow you can imagine, and she goes, do me on
Okay,
it.
that actually is funny though. Now that I think about the do me on it, it's a little funny.
It's like, it's like comedy is all for me about committing to the bit. Like if you halfway do a bit, it's going to show and it's not going to work. And so that they're riding unicorns and saying, do me on that rainbow. Like it works. Yeah. It all like everybody's so thoroughly on the same page in this movie. That
another thing I do want to make sure I get to before we get to the fight too, because it's one of my favorite scenes, maybe in any movie ever. For some reason it just cracks me up. It's after they start to sour, but they still have to host the news together, and it's that scene where they're like trading jabs on the air, but like it's while the credits roll. And I think I said earlier, I'm gonna slap you in public, one of my favorite lines. But then I'm gonna punch you in the ovaries, and I think one underrated thing in this scene is Christina Applegate's "ooh, ow, ow." It's just so well delivered. Straight shot right to the baby maker. Just in terms of like the lines that make us laugh, I think about straight shot straight to the baby maker like once a month. Straight to the baby maker. I'm gonna slap you in public. You have a dirty whore mouth.
You're a dirty pirate whore. That's another scene that gets some love in the post credits or in the credit.
Oh my god, that was such a good one in the.
I really love it. Yeah, and it's one where it's like Christina Applegate breaks, and I'm like, oh, I wish you hadn't, because like that's I think my favorite version is like, I'm gonna shoot you with a BB gun while you're not looking.
That's such a good line.
It's so absurd.
But how can you not break when Will Ferrell says that to you? Is my thing.
Oh yeah, I mean everybody does it all the time. And then like Brick, you still doing your golf tournament? It's like, no, too many people died last year. So and then he starts laughing, and I'm like, oh, that's too bad. That was a really funny joke. That's
why I love the bloopers are. I'm gonna put that in brilliant moments. The bloopers are so funny.
Should we talk about the Anchorman fight?
Oh, we have to. I feel like it's the scene.
Unusual as this style of comedy was at that particular moment, like this was this is just classic escalation. Like there's nothing in terms of how this fight scene is built, there's nothing new about it, right?
It's like West Side Story ripoff.
But even like the weapons that everybody's got, it escalates from you see a knife, then you see brass knuckles, and then you see a grenade, and then it starts escalating into like homemade stuff. Like there's a guy carrying a bat with scissors like shoved through it, and like then you have the Planet of the Apes net thing, and of course the trident, Brick throwing the trident. Rick
killed a guy
from that sort of
I
killed a guy, yeah. From that sort of stuff to how all of the other guys are introduced, it's just nonstop, like one step after another, get a little more ridiculous each time, and then it just kind of blows. But the thing is, like, this whole fight scene, I think, is made on the strength of, boy, that escalated quickly.
Oh yeah,
there's funny stuff, and a random guy just running around on fire, and people getting their arms chopped off, and everybody's got a funny moment or two in the fight scene, and it's all great. That's all well and good, but the fight scene doesn't. The way that it lands is cutting back to the office. He's got a Miller High Life. He said, boy, that escalated quickly. He's just casual about the whole thing. And that like frames the fight scene in such a way that I think it makes the whole thing land.
And I think it's one of those lines that's been memed to death. So I feel like people almost don't remember it being as funny as it was. That is such a funny button. Boy, that escalated
it's
quickly.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it makes the whole thing. Like we might still be talking about the fight scene later, but like, I don't think it's as iconic without, boy, that escalated quickly.
Oh, absolutely. And the immediate cut, like you don't see any aftermath.
Yeah.
Just them in the office drinking beers, hair disheveled.
Yeah, they're all scrambling away from the cops are coming or whatever, and everybody runs away, and then it's just, boy, that escalated quickly.
Rick killed a guy.
It's just perfect. And again, like it establishes the lack of stakes and the extreme stakes. Like simultaneously, there are no stakes in this world because it's like, yeah, you're wanted for murder, whatever. We'll keep laughing about it. And then also the extreme stakes of I'm willing to murder a guy because of a local news channel turf war.
In the fight, I appreciate how like seriously the music treats it. It makes it so much funnier. The composer, I did look it up. It's like Alex Werman. And I think he did a couple other like Adam McKay movies. But like that makes it so much funnier to me. I don't know. Like it's so stupid and serious, and it's not serious at all. It's just. Ugh.
We also haven't talked about Vince Vaughn. In this yet. And I think Wes Mantooth plays a strangely important role in this entire movie because everybody loves Ron Burgundy. And having that one guy that absolutely hates him, and having Vince Vaughn play it perfectly straight. Like Vince Vaughn, like this was Vince Vaughn's whole energy, in that like going from old school into like Wedding Crashers. Like he was that like
the jerk,
very grounded, very fast talking jerk. And for him to be the one guy that it's like, no, I hate Ron Burgundy and I'm gonna kill him one of these days. Like that's an energy that the movie really needed. Oh, yeah. And it's very fun. I obviously they were aware of how funny it would be, but like, you know, in terms of just like putting this movie together out of all of the 2 movies worth of footage that they shot, putting this movie together and making sure that energy is kind of front and center in the movie. Like he's not a small part of the movie, but
well, also it's like you kind of need a villain in a way that isn't Ron Burgundy just being flawed.
Yeah.
He's also responsible for one of my favorite lines, which is I believe it's like maybe Champ Kind, like taunting him by saying like, I'm going to screw your mother and then not take her out and not call her. I'm going to give her a great night.
No, I'm going to take her out to a nice dinner and then not call her. Yeah. I wrote it down as well. Dorothy Mantooth is a saint.
Oh, that's a great name too. There's some great names in this.
Dorothy Mantooth's a saint. And he says it screaming and needing to be held back too. Like it's great.
Not to jump ahead right to the end, but I'm watching it on screen right now where he...
No, let's do it.
Yeah,
let's jump ahead right to the
zoo, the zoo scene. Them falling into the bear pit, which is absurd and ridiculous, and then Baxter saving them.
Jumping into the bear pit.
Yeah.
We go into the bear pit.
And then Baxter speaking to the bear. It's so stupid.
But you know what, though? Like, they have earned the shit out of Baxter speaking to the bear.
100%.
At this point.
You don't even blink at that point.
85 minutes into the most bullshit movie of all time. Yeah, of course. The dog is going to... He was, you know... In my journeys, I met a bear named Kato Pao or whatever. It's great. I remember seeing this movie in the theater for the first time, and that being the moment that I fell out of my chair. Like that, it's.
Baxter's the best character of this movie.
The first time I saw that in the theater, I have a distinct memory of just losing my mind about that moment.
I also can imagine like the variations they went through on his like subtitles, his little dialogue.
Yeah, it was either 100 drafts or just one.
Yeah,
like it's hard. It's hard to tell with those. And this is, by the way, we skipped right over Danny Trejo having a little cameo too.
Oh my God.
The movie is just...
It just has everyone in it. That's the thing.
Yeah. We didn't talk about Jack Black, that scene either.
Oh my God, that was also a great scene.
But Jack Black punting, I mean, that leads directly to The Glass Case of Emotion.
Which I think is the
which
most
is a quote
memed.
I used when I was cutting the teaser for this season together.
Yeah.
That was Jack, bad man punted Baxter. Like... He punts a dog off a bridge. Like,
also, as a visual gag, the very clearly fake dog flying off the bridge was also very funny.
Because, and that's the thing that I love about the fact that that's clearly a stuffed animal is like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to look at that and be like, oh, that dog looks fake. Yeah. Everybody, it's so funny. It doesn't matter. That's not the rules of this world. So
it gets away with so much.
To get serious about the movie for a split second, like it is an incredible exercise in like knowing what you're making, which feels like an obvious thing, but I think it's something that people lose sight of. Who was it that it was a movie we were talking about where they got about halfway through it and they heard somebody say a particular line. Oh no, it was a different show we do on CineFix. It was Doug Liman talking about Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and there's a moment in the middle of filming where Brad Pitt did something funny, and Doug Liman says, "Oh, I'm making a comedy. This is a comedy."
Yeah.
And like didn't realize it until like halfway through or whatever.
Oh, that's
so
funny.
there is something to be said for knowing what you're doing.
Oh yeah.
And like this movie, I think, is a prime example of a movie that knows exactly what it is, and it doesn't veer off of its path even a little bit.
No, and I think if there was like any moment where it truly broke, it wouldn't have worked. But it's also one of those movies that I feel like was really big during that time, where it just feels like one long SNL sketch in a way that I actually say as a compliment. Like, again, just improving, nothing makes sense, nothing has real stakes.
You're talking about McKay's directorial debut. Like, he came straight from being a head writer at SNL for this. And obviously that's where he and Will Ferrell knew each other. And, like, I don't know. I read some of the old reviews. And, you know, some of them were like, there's no premise, or it's like, it's
That's
a thin
fine.
premise that can't carry. I'm like, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. But, like, most of them did finally come around to, it's like, but Farrell's hilarious, and there's, like, a dozen lines in here people are going to be quoting forever.
Well,
And
like,
it's
that's
yep, that's what this movie is. Like, in terms of, like, a balanced movie diet or whatever, this is one of those movies that it's just like, no, this movie gave us a dozen incredible jokes. If that's all it contributes to the history of mankind, it's done the Lord's work.
It sustained meme culture before memes were a thing, and I think that's very significant. I think that's a real achievement. And we've talked about this like in some of our comedy episodes, where it's really hard to go through some comedies without just saying like, but this part's really funny, but this part's really funny. Isn't that the point of the comedy? Like,
It is the point.
Isn't it just supposed to make you laugh a bunch?
Ron, where are you?
I'm in a glass case of emotion.
If we want to move on to movie lists, I actually...
Is it on any? I'm
There's-
genuinely very curious if it's on any.
Okay. Here we go, moving to movie lists.
Yeah.
It is on... We did an 8-bit cinema. There's an
Okay.
animated 8-bit version of Anchorman on CineFix somewhere. But I got an honorable mention in the top 10 funniest movie moments. And the one that we flagged was the glass case of emotion, him in the phone booth. But it's specifically because, like, doesn't matter what he's saying, doesn't matter what's written, what the actual joke is, it's how it's being delivered,
Oh, yeah.
right? And so Will Ferrell, and again, like we kind of set it up top, like this movie succeeds on the strength of Will Ferrelling all over this movie. And so, like, there's no other actor that would have done it the same way. You know, there's no other, like, I don't know that anybody else would have made Glass Case of Emotion quite so funny in the way that Will Ferrell did. And so, like, ultimately that pick in that video went to Peter Sellers as President Merkin Muffley in Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah.
In the idea of just like, there's nothing particularly special about the script. There's
Yeah.
nothing particularly special about these words that he's saying, but like the way that he's saying it elevates it in an incredible way.
Well, again, I feel like it's one of those moments that has just been memed to death, so it's not as funny to me anymore. But that was hilarious back at the time. Just like, I'm in a glass case of like it's great.
It became a meme for a reason.
Yeah. Same with Boy
Like,
That
it's-
Escalated Quickly. Same with I Love Lamp. Like,
I love Lamp.
I love Lamp.
I love Lamp.
Are you just looking at things in the office and saying, I
I love Lamp.
love Lamp?
But otherwise, no, it hasn't been on any other movie lists.
Yeah.
So, top 10 funniest movie moments. Got an honorable mention.
I'm kind of surprised it's not on more. I don't know. Maybe that's just me and my like millennialness talking. But
It all depends on the category, right?
Yeah.
Like the fact that we brought it up in funniest movie moments. I don't know that we've done a top 10 comedies just because that's
Have we not
weird
really?
and broad and impossible.
Yeah.
No. We do a lot of other. There are other more clearly defined genres that make making a list out of them easier. Like we've done sci-fi and westerns and thrillers and all of that stuff. But
I would love to see movies about journalism. I mean, I'm a little biased,
Yeah,
but I feel
journalism
like that,
movies?
Yeah, journalism movies.
you'll have to start the spreadsheet on that one.
This would be a really funny addition with like Spotlight and All the President's Men and Anchorman.
Right, and Anchorman.
And Anchorman.
Absolutely. Shall we torf?
Let's torf. Torf numero uno. True or false? Co-writer and director Adam McKay has said that in the first draft of the script, the story was about a plane load of news anchors who crashed in the mountains and discovered that the plane, which they collided, was carrying monkeys and martial arts equipment, leading to a battle between cannibalistic newsmen and star-throwing monkeys. That's a hefty one.
God, I hope that's true. Whether or not that's true, I need him to go back and make that movie.
I know, right? I would watch the crap out of it.
True, because that's what my heart tells me.
And your heart is correct, which is so funny to me that is actually true.
Yep.
It was written as a parody of the 1993 American biographical survival drama Alive.
Alive, yeah, about the soccer team.
Yeah. The script was so bizarre that the original producer, Paul Thomas Anderson, rescinded his offer to produce the movie. But like to me, that just
PTA was gonna.
Yeah, he was gonna produce, but he was like, no, this is so
PTA was
silly.
gonna produce. Yeah.
Which, by the
a
way, I would watch
spoof on a true
yeah.
story.
I would watch the crap out of that.
Hell yeah. I wonder if the only thing left over from that draft was the opening titles. They said these are all. This is based on true events.
Yeah.
The only thing, names, places, and events are the only things that were changed.
Well, I feel like you see glimmers of
I wonder
it
if
in the
that's.
fight scene.
I wonder if that's left over from that original script.
Yeah.
That was a play on the Andes soccer team.
Well, it also just shows like how much they had for this like character in this world. Like I feel like for as simple as a movie as this was, they put so much thought into like the entire thing.
I mean, you can't make a movie without it being just this long and terrible journey. Like it is against the will of nature to make a movie.
But I do love the alternate universe where Paul Thomas Anderson produced this movie, and it was
produced
a
a
parody
movie
of
about
Alive.
cannibal. Yeah.
I do want to see that.
I want it to happen so bad.
Yeah. Okay, you got one. Here's Torf number 2. Tim Robbins agreed to cameo in exchange for custom wigs. True or false?
Oh, I'm gonna go true. I like the idea that Tim Robbins is like, yeah, I'll do it, but I'm keeping the wigs.
You know Tim Robbins well. That's true. He said during an October 2019 AV Club interview, he mentioned that he agreed to take on the role in Anchorman, even though he would be paid very little for it because they promised to make him a custom wig for the role that he got to keep after filming ended, which is adorable.
That it's less about Tim Robbins and more about like the vibe of this movie, and I bet that I bet he was not alone in that. I bet there's a lot of like, I'm keeping this suit and stuff like that went on.
Oh, that's a more fun fact. A part of this trivia is he still owns both wigs as of 2019, and he often uses them in Halloween costumes.
Hell yeah, he does.
Very sweet.
That's great. Tim Robbins still going out on Halloween as his character from Anchorman.
Can you imagine if you saw that? Like you just saw it on Halloween.
Yeah, if he just shows up at the door, that'd be great.
That's excellent. All right, you're on a roll. All right, Torf number 3.
2 for 2.
Yeah, 2 for 2. All right, the narrator, veteran Chicago news anchor Bill Curtis, refused to say the word penis. True or false? The Bill Curtis part isn't a trick. That was who the narrator was. So just the
Bill. Yeah, I recognize Bill Curtis.
Yeah.
I've listened to enough Wait, Don't Tell Me to recognize Bill Curtis.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of any moments where he used euphemisms for penis that they like danced around it, but you know what? I bet balls was a second draft. On Ron Burgundy is the balls. I bet that's a second draft, and it was originally something about a penis. I'm going true.
And that's funnier too, to say the balls rather than the penis. Yeah. Or has a big penis.
Necessity is the mother of invention,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
Well, to that point, it is true. Got another one right. Yeah, he refused producer Judd Apatow's request to say penis, later admitting that he didn't want to say it in a movie that might be an embarrassment once it proved popular. He said he was open to saying it in the sequel, which I don't remember the sequel that well. Like, even though I saw it when it came out.
I never saw it.
You never saw it? I remember it being fun.
I didn't even go.
I did see it in theaters, but I haven't rewatched it, which maybe says...
I guess I still have a chance. I could watch it.
You could. It
It
exists. Didn't go anywhere.
I could go watch it. Yeah.
I think it was fine. Additional fun fact, McKay trimmed several shots of Ron's dog's member to keep their PG-13 rating. So there is a cut of this movie that has more Baxter penis than...
an R-rated amount of dog penis?
Yeah, that must be a lot of dog penis, I would feel.
I'm gonna go false.
Oh no, that's not.
No, was this a separate thing?
It's part of the same.
So that was true.
That was true. Yeah, that's just a fun
scratch
fact that I'm
I
adding.
didn't say anything.
Yeah.
Disregard.
Wow, you almost broke your streak. All right, number 4. The entire movie was shot in San Diego.
False.
Yeah.
So the scene where he's running from the glass case of emotion back towards the studio, and he like knocks that dude out of the way. Mm-hmm. There's a guy in the background, big fro. I worked with him for years at Fox. His name is Aaron Zimmerman. But I know they shot that part in L.A. I know that much.
Most of it was done in L.A. The only filming of San Diego was aerial shots.
Shout out to AZ, by the way, if he's listening.
He is. He's a fan of the show. Yeah, the only filming of San Diego was aerial shots. The rest was like L.A. The zoo scene was Griffith Park Zoo, which I can see for sure. But yeah, very little in San Diego. All right, last one. The first draft envisioned very different actors in the roles.
I mean, Will Ferrell wrote it, so I can't imagine he was imagining somebody else as...
You're right about that.
I'm going to go... Oh, man, this is going to be one of those halvesies. I'm going to go false, but I won't be surprised if it's true because, like, there were very different types envisioned for some of the roles.
It's true. I took a liberty with very different actors. I feel like I just needed to spice it up.
Oh, okay.
But no, I'll just read through... John C. Reilly for Champ Kind, which I can definitely see. Mm-hmm. Chris Parnell for Brick Tamland. Interesting. Ben Stiller as Brian Fontana. Ed Harris as Ed Harkin. Dan Aykroyd as Garth Holiday. Alec Baldwin as Frank Vichard. The script also specified...
that was the Luke Wilson guy.
Yeah, Right? Which, I mean, not a huge role, so like...
Would have been fun.
Yeah, would have been fun.
Dan Aykroyd as the guy that Chris Parnell ended up playing would have been way worse.
Oh yeah, and I think
that would have been no good.
I think Chris Parnell as Brick wouldn't have been as good. Would have been fine.
I think he would have been fine.
Yeah. John C. Reilly, I can definitely see as Champ Kind. I'm almost kind of surprised that didn't happen.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
They made up for it with Step Brothers though. Anything that they were going to do with him as Champ Kind, they got out of their system with Step Brothers.
I also remember a lot of different actresses auditioning for Veronica Corningstone. Could have been a very different movie. But yeah, always Will Ferrell as Ron Burgundy, of course.
Yeah. So I got that one wrong. I was adjacent to wrong. Adjacent.
Yeah. I would say you got like a 90% on Torf overall today.
Okay.
Not bad.
Got it.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Although I will say doing Torf by myself feels like it's just like a weird flex, and I frankly don't like it. So if it's just a two-hander anymore, I'm not doing Torf by myself anymore.
No, it is odd.
I didn't like that like quiz me energy that just showed up. So like
yeah. But we've already done it. It's already in the episode, so what can we do?
It's done. It's done. We already did it, and so all I can do is apologize so many times.
That's our bad, guys. Sorry.
Who's your MVP?
Will Ferrell. And it's not even close.
Will Ferrell.
It's the most obvious choice in the world.
Alex, I'm going to send you a screen grab of my notes where I literally typed out Will Ferrell, and it's not even close.
No, but it's true.
It is. Yeah, no, that's verbatim what I typed out.
Yeah, there's no other choice. Like
Will Ferrell, and it's not even close.
Like, and I love Christina Applegate. I think she's underrated in this movie. I think Adam McKay did a great job trusting his actors and letting them improv. But come on, it's Will Ferrell's movie. Like,
no, everybody did great, but it's Will Ferrell's movie.
Oh my god! I just saw your screen.
Will Ferrell.
That's literally what you wrote. That's so funny.
So we're keeping Will Ferrell in this, but are we putting Nicolas Cage anywhere?
Again, I always forget about this segment. God, where does Nick Cage? There's so many places he could go.
Also, I think as good as Vince Vaughn was in this, I'd put him in as Wes Mantooth.
I was also thinking of the editor-in-chief, the Fred Willard character, Fred Willard.
Yeah. Present day Nick Cage, I think would be good, but Nicolas Cage in 2004 is like, is he doing National Treasure at that point?
Yeah, I think that's National Treasure time. I could definitely see him as the Vince Vaughn role.
Yeah, I think he'd be good. Yeah, I think that'd be a good crazy behind the eyes energy to that.
I think that would be good.
2004 was National Treasure. 2004, absolutely.
Yeah.
You want to follow up adaptation with the supporting role in Anchorman? That's
who doesn't?
That's what you want to do.
Yeah, that would be funny. I'm actually surprised Nicolas Cage isn't in this movie, just because everyone's in it.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You would feel like he'd pop up somewhere.
It does. It would make perfect sense for him to be in it.
Yeah.
But. Okay, so where did you have it on your list?
Oh, it's high, which I don't know if that's...
It's up there?
It's 11. on old Alex Stedman's list.
Number 11.
I can't like.
There are only 10 movies that you prefer to Anchorman.
This was my favorite movie for such a large chunk of my life.
Yeah.
Like I went through like we all go through phases about like what our favorite movie is. But like my entire, I want to say like early adolescence, like teenage years, it was just quoting Anchorman. This movie is like so part of my film vocabulary. It's crazy. And again, I don't know if I'd be a journalist without it, oddly.
That's great. I love that for you. That Veronica Corningstone.
I mentioned it in my college essay somewhere that exists.
Yep. That's great. I'm going to need you to find that. And I'll track down the story I wrote in elementary school about working with Arnold Schwarzenegger Jr. one day on Terminator 4. I didn't have it on my list.
Not shocked. Did anyone else? Am I alone?
I'm also told, yeah, this is it. This is all you. It's a solo Alex joint.
I'm weirdly proud of it.
So
I don't know why.
No, do it. Hey, we started this entire show with me talking about Independence Day being the 15th best movie of all time. I'm not going to give you a hard time about it.
Are you going to strike it? Should we go over that? Wait,
I don't think I can. I already used mine. I used mine on Uncut Gems.
Wait, do we only get one a season?
So,
I don't remember the rules.
I think so. I mean, I don't want one of us to go that bananas.
All right, then get out of here.
Nope, strike it. Because, like, frankly, I'm also, now that you bring it up, I'm a little bit in my own feelings about like, well, wait a minute, how like I cut Uncut Gems, but I'm letting Anchorman through.
Well,
like, that doesn't feel
according to the rules.
Right,
you don't get to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, according to the rules, and I didn't write them. Literally, I did. There are a couple rules on the show that I did write, but that's not one of them.
This is how I win. I get away by default.
Yep. But Cal's not here to strike it, so I assume you're not going to strike it.
Absolutely not.
So Anchorman survives.
I feel like a swell of
what
pride.
Number?
The fact that I managed to strong-arm this stupid-ass movie on the list.
You know what? This season, this Alone Against the World thing is
it's been
strange times.
Yeah,
like,
it's a weird
season. It's weird. Because I don't, as honest as I was, and as I think open and vulnerable as I was in my feelings about cutting Uncut Gems, I do feel strange about this.
Wait, so let me ask you,
like, cut Anchorman also.
Would you strike it if I actually don't remember that rule that you only get one strike, but I'm going to use it to my advantage. Would you strike it if you could?
I think so. Yeah. Yes, because and partially because like I'm starting to get more and more fascinated with the structure of this list and like how do you go about creating a top 100 list and we've talked a lot about it, like how many from each genre, how many from each like do you want to put that much thought into it? It was like only one per director, only one per franchise, only one, all of these different little things, but like how do you construct a holistic sort of time capsule of a list of just like, a billion years from now, somebody's going to watch all these movies and get a good sense of what movies were. Like, is that the point of this list, or is it just movies that we just kind of like? Because ultimately, like, we've got Monty Python on the list, and I don't think we need Anchorman. Like, and that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Here's counter argument. I feel that this isn't, and I've seen some people, a little testy about this in the comments. I don't think this is a list of the 100 best movies of all time.
No.
I think all four of us made lists that were very personal to ourselves. And I think at the end, this list will be a weird and stupid amalgamation of our personal tastes, which hopefully is like a halfway decent list of good movies.
Yeah. Even if it's not, like, that's decently irrelevant. And even on CineFix, like, forever, like, we've never ranked anything. We've made our bones doing top 10 lists for 15 years now or whatever, but like they're not ranked. It's all just different representations. So like, I get it. I get it.
Honestly,
but also,
I feel like if a list
I think Uncut Gems is an objectively better movie than Anchorman.
No, you're
and so like
wrong.
these being in such close proximity, and then me having nothing to do about it, like
Also, though, I don't think Cal would cut it unless he was just getting revenge for Uncut Gems. I think because I've talked.
But that wouldn't be revenge on me though. So
yeah, that's true. I did let you take that bullet. I've talked to Cal about this movie, I think, and I think he enjoys it. So I'm going to speak for him in this moment and say that he wouldn't strike it. I'm not fully getting away with murder.
All right. All right, whatever. What number?
It's
So it's
this
just you at
dumbass
11.
Movies. Oh, I'm proud of myself.
It's gonna put it in like the 70s somewhere.
Yeah,
about
I would say
70s or
70s.
80s, I guess.
Like I'm trying to think of like where like you got Independence Day and where. I think
it was like 80 something.
I think Uncut Gems was something like 15 for Cal, and it was like 93. So I'm gonna say like 80, roughly.
80-ish.
80-ish.
I'll take the under. I think it's gonna be in the 70s.
All right, let's see. 76. Okay, I feel like 80. I got pretty close on that one before you prices
76.
righted me on that.
No, yeah, it's a tie.
Yeah.
We were all in the same neighborhood. We're on to the algorithm enough at this point that we got it.
I feel like we're pretty good at it. At least I am pretty good at it. I feel.
Yeah, we're on to you, Dan.
We're on to you. Can't trick us. 76. This is my
76. Well, congratulations, Anchorman. I mean, it was already ranked 20 spots ahead of where Uncut Gems was anyway.
God,
so,
that's funny.
Like, if people really want to get upset about it, I guess it was the damage was already done.
Yeah, true.
But listen, it's a fun movie, and like the number of quotable lines that it gave us, just the sheer volume of them, I think that's fine. That merits a spot on anybody's list.
Yeah.
I think.
I stand by it, personally.
Listen, you're a journalist now because of this movie.
I don't
so,
think
like,
I would be in this room right now.
Who am
for
I to
this
boot this
dumb movie?
Who am I to boot this?
I have my
movie off the
journalism
list?
degree because of this stupid ass movie. It has to be on a list that I'm a part
That's
of.
great.
Yeah.
That is the real lesson. All right. Well, so congratulations, Anchorman. You hung on to your 76th spot on the CineFix Top 100. Frankly, a little surprised that
We did it,
that's,
gang.
and I don't know why. That's just my own feelings. But good work. You did it. But that will do it for us this week. Thank you for watching Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy with us. Also, thank you to Great Odin's Raven himself, producer Tayo Oyekan, network talent scouts, technical producers Marhyan, Franzen, and Amir Rakib, and Baxter the dog, DP Jamie Parslow. Meanwhile, Dan can jump in a bear pit for all I care. He's done. But come back next week when we continue season 3, Alone Against the World. Maybe Calibro's, what does he have? Fireman's elbow? What did we say? Maybe, I don't know. Whatever.
General unwell, I feel.
Maybe his general unwellness will clear up by then because I know he's going to want to be back to talk about this movie. John Carpenter's They Live. The pendulum continues to swing
What a season
back and
this
forth.
is.
What a season. At the whims of an algorithm this season. But join us next week for John Carpenter's They Live. I'm excited. I love that movie. So we'll see you next time. Stay safe. Be good. Stay classy, CineFix. Or should I say, go yourself, CineFix.
Yes. We're just going to leave that whole thing in there, I feel. Because I was
Yeah,
going to yell
might
at
as
you
well.
if you didn't say stay classic. Yeah. That's the take.